Hey guys, Rudi here with another Python tutorial for CSSE1001. In this video, I'm going to be going through this week's tutorial, which is the week 6 tutorial, and basically just going through my solution and also just the thought process I go through, maybe just breaking down the problem a little bit. So feel free to stop and pause the video at any time, and I highly encourage you all to attempt a solution first, because you'll gain a lot more out of these videos if you use it more of as a sort of supporting mechanism as a just watching it to get the answers. Okay, so that being said, let's get into this week's tute, which despite its title here is pretty much entirely about dictionaries and a little bit of file I/O. So firstly let's just get into it. What's a dictionary? So a dictionary essentially allows you to map a series of keys to a series of values. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's just go over here and make a test one. So firstly, we use the curly brace notation to set up a dictionary. And let's just say we wanted to map our letters or the numbers of the numbers to their corresponding alphabetical letter, right? Etc. So let's see, we've got this dictionary now, which has a series of keys, 1, 2, and 3, and they all map to a corresponding value, A, B, or C in this case. And we can access those values using the keys, just with a very similar list notation, right? So x of 1 gives us A, x2, x3, etc. Right? And we're not restricted to using numbers as keys. So we could set up a dictionary that maps strings to other strings. First could map to I don't know, apple. Second could map to banana, and etc. Right? And so we have this dictionary, and we can once again use the same notation, putting in the key, and we can get out the value. Right? So put in second, we got banana. Okay, cool. So how can this be useful? Probably a couple of you are thinking. So let's think about a more close to home example. The last assignment, right? We had all these sort of mappings about gender and height and that kind of stuff. So let's think about how we could have set up a dictionary for that. So we had the first answer I believe was male, and then female, and then other. Okay. So we were supposed to return an integer 1, 2, or 3 from our assignment, right? So if we returned a 1, for instance, we could use this gender dictionary to get out male, right? And so we can see in this case that the dictionary gives us a very powerful tool for mapping these keys to these answers that we can use in lots of circumstances, really. Okay, with all that intro stuff out of the way, though, let's get into this week's tute. So it's all about Scrabble. If you don't know how to play Scrabble, I don't know what you've been doing for 20 years, but just go look it up, go look at the rules. Essentially, we've got all these keys, and all of these letters have a corresponding score based on how rare they are. So let's go download this file, scrabblescores.txt. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, and we can see here, I'll just zoom in a bit. We can see here that we've got every letter, then a comma on each line, and then its corresponding Scrabble score. Okay, so that's cool. Something interesting to note here is that we can see that we can have multiple keys mapping to the same value, right? In this case, 3. So that's something to note. For instance, if I go back over here and I make a new dictionary, I can very easily have something like A mapping to 1, and then also have B mapping to 1, right? And Python's totally fine with that because it's just which key we put in, we get the corresponding value, right? It's no more complex than that. And let's just zoom back out again. Okay, so what do we want to be doing? We want to be reading in this file, the scrabblescores.txt that we've got up here, and we want to be making a dictionary which maps all the letter values to their corresponding score. Okay, so which uses this file to create a dictionary that maps letters to their score. So we're going to have to do some file I/O stuff, right? So let's just get straight into it. I know I'm going to have to be reading over each line in this file and getting the values out. So let's first set up our file stuff. Okay. So we've got our file. Let's just call it F. And we want to open it, right? So we use open. Now, we only want to open this file and we only want to read it, right? We don't need to do any editing in this file or anything like that, right? We just need to read it. So we open it in read mode. That's what that little R there is symbolizing. There's also write mode and a few other modes, but in this case, we only need read mode. Okay, and also just good habit, whenever we set up a file, we also want to close it when we're done. Okay, now, as I said before, we're going to wanting to be looping or reading over this file line by line and extracting our information that way, right? So if we want to loop over this file line by line, we can go for line in file, right? And that allows to loop over each line and read it. Okay, so let's just print out each line. Save that, and let's run that and see how that works. Let's just a dummy return for the moment. Cool, and I'm actually just going to move this shell back over to the left here. Okay, so now let's try running. What have we got here? Read scores, Scrabble scores.txt, I think it was called. Whoops. Awesome. And let's see what we got here. We're printing out each line and its corresponding score. Okay, cool. So that's looking good so far, but we want to get a bit more specific than that, right? We want to find a way to separate out these P and this 3 value. Now we can see that on every line, there's a very specific format, right? It's the letter, then the comma, then the score. Okay, so we want to be separating this line out by the comma. Now there's two main methods you can do to basically achieve this outcome, right? We've got string.split, which will allow you to split a string up into various separated sections. So in this case, so we do line.split, it'll give us a list of all the things separated by commas, right? So it would give us a letter and a number, which is good. But my personal preferred method to use here is the partition method, which does a very similar thing, but it basically gives you 3 results out. Okay, so let's just have a quick look at what this is doing. Okay, so let's see what we got here. We're getting 3 things back. We're getting the letter, the comma, and everything that was on the other side. Okay, so this is going to give us back 3 things. So what we can do is we can actually unpack these 3 things in one statement. So instead of assigning these 3 things into X, let's actually assign it to 3 things. So our thing on the left is the letter. That guy we're getting in the middle is a comma, so let's just call that variable comma. And then the thing on the right that we're getting there is hopefully our number. Okay, now we don't really need this comma guy here. We're never going to use this variable again. So something you'll probably see a lot of in Python is this underscore, right? And this is just a variable name, right? We've just called it underscore. But since we're not going to use it again, we just denote it there, and it's a dud variable almost. We're not really going to use it, so we just leave an underscore. Okay, and now let's print letter and number. Okay, let's run this again. Okay, awesome. Looks like we are printing our corresponding letter and our number using partition. Looking good. Okay, so in this case, let's actually try and set up our dictionary. Now, we don't want to set up our dictionary inside the for loop, right? Because that would just overwrite the dictionary every time. So let's set up our dictionary on the outside, our scores dictionary. So we set up empty braces, empty dictionary. Okay, now instead of printing each time, let's try and write to this dictionary. So remember, using very similar to the list notation, very similar notation, excuse me. We've got scores is our dictionary, then the key we want to use, so we want the key to be the letter, and it's mapping to number. Okay, so that's what we want. And cool, then we finish the loop, we want to close our file, and we don't want to return nothing here, right? We've done all this hard work to make this dictionary. Kind of be pretty stupid to just return nothing and let that all go to waste. So let's return our scores variable. Okay, and let's run that. So let's just assign X to this guy. And of course we didn't print anything, right? So we got no output on our shell. And let's just see what's in X. Okay, awesome. We've got this dictionary set up. It's looking pretty good so far, but we see we've got all these 1\n's. Now the \n is the new line character, right? And so when we look at our file initially, right, we see we've got these new lines in there. So we don't want those extra new lines in there, right? We just want to capture the 1 on its own, right? We don't want this extra new line stuff. So there's a really useful method we can use for that as well. And that is the string.strip method, right? So let's just go over here and see what stir.strip gives us. Return a copy of the string S with leading and trailing white space removed, right? Now, white space is spaces, tabs, new lines, all that good stuff. All that junk in this case. Let's just scrap all that junk. And so what we want to do is we want to reassign line to be the stripped version of line, right? And this should hopefully get rid of all the stuff we've got on either side. Let's just run that one more time. What's an X? Okay, awesome. We're almost done here, right? Something to note is that you can see that I ran it the first time, and we've got this U, E, Y. I've printed it again here. We've got a K, S, W, right? This dictionary is not an ordered thing, right? You don't want to have an ordered series of keys. Sorry, if you want an ordered series of keys, you probably don't want to be using a dictionary, right? A dictionary is more just if I tell it what key I want, I'm going to get this value, right? There's no specific order that's guaranteed when using a dictionary. But the one thing we've got here is I can see that this is a little string 5, so we've got the little quotey guys around it. Now, I don't want that because I want to be able to do some maths with our scores, right? We want to know how many points we got when we played Scrabble. So instead of assigning this to number, let's just cast this as an integer. Now I'm just going to assume that they give us a good file, right? And so let's assume we'll always get a number out. And here we can see we finally got it sort of looking how we want it. X, A is 1. Let's see if Q is 10, I think it was. Yep, awesome. Looks like it's working well, okay? So there's our read scores function. Let's see what was next on the agenda. Write a function getScore that takes as input the scores dictionary and a string containing a word and returns the word's Scrabble score. Okay, so we want to be able to take in some dictionary of scores, just like the one we just produced, and we want to take in a word and we want to figure out how many letters there are. Okay, so let's just scroll down here where I've got my doc string already set up. Doc strings are important, kids. Way too many people lost way too many easy marks by not doing their doc strings. So always remember parameters, return, and the type. The type is one of the most important things about this. Okay, many tutor around aside, let's just get back into this. So, assuming we've got this scores dictionary set up that gives us a convenient mapping of letters to numbers, right? So let's just think about how we would approach this problem, right? How would you approach this problem in real life? If I want to count up how many points I got when I go for Scrabble, I don't know about you guys, but I look at the first letter, I go, how many points is that? Cool. And then I add it up. And then I look at the second letter and I go, cool, how many points is that? And I add that to my total and I keep working through it, right? So that's the approach we should take, right? Let's a logical approach. Think of how you would do it maybe, and then let's try and apply that to Python. So we've got this word guy here, right? And it looks like we want to be looping over that word to check each individual character. Okay, so there's set up our loop. Now, what do we want to do each time? We want to figure out how many points this character is worth, right? And we want to add it to our total. So, well, let's just think about getting the points that it to be worth, right? We know we've got this dictionary scores. If we pass this dictionary a valid character, right, it should spit us out some value that gives us how many points it's worth, right? It should spit out something that tells us how many points that letter's worth. So in that case, let's just set up a total, right? And every time we go through a character in the word, we want to add how many points it was by looking in the dictionary, getting our points, and then adding it back into the total. Okay? Now obviously we can't just start with a total like that, so let's think about what our total would be before we get into the loop. Initialization, well, we haven't counted any scores yet, so our total is going to start at 0. Okay? And then we would want to return the total at the end. So just a bit more, maybe get a bit more insight about what's happening here. Let's print scores of char each time we go through this. Okay? Sweet. So let's try running this guy. I'm just going to move this guy back over to the right quickly so that I can copy paste these guys in because I am lazy. Cool. Scores. And now let's run our getScore function. Okay, let's just move this guy back. So let's see. I went through and we're printing these out each time, okay? So first time I went through with a Q and it printed the corresponding thing, which was 10, right? Because from our dictionary, we know that scores of Q gives us a 10, right? Because we set up that mapping initially, and we know that the key Q should map to 10, right? So we do all these for each individual one. U is worth 1, A is worth 1, C is worth 3, K is worth 5. And then by keeping this running total at the end, we just return the total out, and we get 20. So let's just run that one more time without this. Maybe with some different Scrabble words. Let's come back. Let's get our scores dictionary, and now let's get scores. Rudi is the sickest. 38. What a word, right? And so we can see it's looping through this each time, summing up all our scores and putting them into this end total variable, which we're now getting back out. Okay. This is very similar to some of the MyPy exercises from the earlier weeks to do with finding the average, right? We just keep a running total, except this time we're getting our number from the dictionary. Okay, cool. What else we got here? Reading config files. Okay, so download the file config.txt. Don't think I remember to do that yet. Yep, no, so let's just grab that now. Okay, and we can see that our config.txt file looks like this. We've got these section headers, and then these properties underneath those section headers. And so basically it looks like we've got a user, and then every user seems to have a name, an email, and a mobile, and they have a corresponding value, right? So we can see that this section here is looking a lot like a dictionary, right? Name key, value, Eric Idle. Email key, value, e.idle@pythons. Okay, so what we want to be doing here is we want to be writing a function read config. Oh, here's one I prepared earlier. Read config, which takes a configuration file such as this and returns a dictionary representation of data as in this example. So what we can actually see here is that we've got some dictionaryception happening, if you will. So let's just post this into the shell and see what we get. So we've got this double level dictionary, right? Because you can see that we've got this user key, right? And it's mapping to, see we've got a curly brace here, it's actually mapping to another dictionary, which in turn has its own key value pairs. Okay, this is a really common structure as well, because it basically allows us to set up sort of a tree structure almost, where we've got the top level, and then we cascade down into these user and notifications, and then that cascades down into the individual settings, right? It's a really popular way of doing config type files. Okay, so we want to find a way to basically read this file and turn it into this dictionary of dictionaries. Okay, so that's what our first task here is for read config. Okay, so just thinking about a way we can start this, right? Well, let's just do our initial stuff first, right? We're gonna have to read this config file. So once again, set up our file, right? We want to read from the file name. Once again, we're only reading, so write mode, little r. Okay. Now we're gonna want to read through every one of these files. Sorry, every one of these lines in the file. So let's once again set up our loop, same as the first question, right? For line and f. Now here's probably where it gets a bit tricky, right? And once again, closing our file when we're done. So how do we approach a problem like this? Well, we're reading each line by line, right? So probably a good place to start is thinking about how many situations do we have here? Our line either is one of these guys, a heading, a section heading, if you will, with these brackets on the end, or it's going to be one of these lines, right? Which is a property or a subheading, whatever you want to think about it as. So basically, those are the only two situations, and we want to handle these differently, right? So I imagine we probably want to start off with some sort of if statement, right? In which we basically go, if it's a heading, do this, or if it's one of these guys, the properties, do this. Okay. So it's pretty easy to identify these headings, right? Because what do we know about them? They have a bracket at the start and they have a bracket at the end. Okay, well that makes it pretty easy. We know that Python has these starts with. spell that right? Starts with methods, right? And it has an ends with method, which works exactly the same way. Okay, so let's just try this for starters, right? We just want to read through the file and see if we can only print the lines that have headers on them. Okay, so what did I call this guy? Read config.txt. Okay, we got nothing out. Why did we get nothing out? Let's have a bit of think about this. If you remember from the previous example, the last time I tried to print stuff out directly, I got all these \n characters at the end of my line, right? So maybe that's screwing with us. Let's just get rid of this guy for the moment. Okay, sweet. Like we can see we're printing the lines now, but we can also see that there's this new line gap after every one. So yeah, it looks like we were right. We were printing a new line at the end of each one. So let's actually put that back in here. That bit of, oops. Oh, I hate that sound so much. Let's just type it back in. Right? But we want to get rid of all those new line characters. So let's just use the same trick we used last time. That's strip. Line dot strip. Okay? And now let's try running that and see if that works. Okay, cool, there we go. So we see we've also stripped out that new line we were having. Okay, cool. So let's go back and have a look at this. So we can see that we were able to identify when we've got a line that's a heading. So we've got two cases now, right? Either the line is a heading or the line is not a heading. Heading or let's call these guys properties. Okay. So in the case that we have a heading, right? What do we want to do when we get a new heading? Well, we've got this global dictionary here. Let's actually set that up first as well, right? When we open our file, when we start reading, let's set up our big global dictionary. Now, our big dictionary. Okay? So this is our big guy. Now, whenever we find a new section heading, user, we want to create this user guy, right? Now, what kind of thing is this? This is a dictionary. So basically, whenever we find a user heading, we know that we're going to have another dictionary inside our big dic. Okay? So, we know if we find a heading, we want to be setting up a new dictionary inside. Now, what's the key for this guy? Well, if we were going through it the first time, it would be user, right? Now, we don't want these extra braces in the moment though. But let's just chuck them in for now and see how we go. So we want to assign this new key value and we want to set up a new empty dictionary, right? Let's try running this. Oh no, what have I done? Oh right, I haven't used my else block. Let's just comment that out for the moment. Okay, and I didn't print anything, so let's actually just return our dictionary when we're done. And let's just assign that guy to X. So what's an X? Cool, so we can see it's pretty similar to that top structure we were looking at. We've got a notifications and a dictionary, and we've got a user key and a dictionary. But we've got these ugly brackets in there. We don't want those. So whenever we're trying to, we can see that it's always the first character and the last character, right? So let's try this. Let's go into that the line we have. And if everyone remembers about string slicing, right, or splicing, if you want to sound super cool like me, that what you can do is we don't want the first character, right? Now the first character is 0. So let's start counting from 1. And we can also go negative, right? So we want to go up until the last character. We don't want that. So -1, right? So this is the guy we're after. And just to get a closer look at what this is doing, let's just comment out this guy for a sec. Whoops. Oh my, I'm getting Facebook notifications. Oh, I'm gonna have to cut that out afterwards. But yeah, okay, cool. Let's have a look at this. And yeah, there we go. See, we managed to get rid of that first character and that last character. Okay. So instead of putting in the whole of line, let's actually just use this guy, which we used here. Whoops. A whole bunch of square braces. Okay, cool. Now, in the other hand, and actually, no, let's just quickly see what our dictionary looks like at the moment now. And awesome. We see we've got these top level dictionaries set up, user and notifications. Okay. Now the other thing is when we have these properties, right? So these property values, if we just go back to the tute, the property values have to appear inside this dictionary that we're looking at. So if we hit a property, we want to find some sort of way to add that property key value to this part of the dictionary. Okay? So we're not just going to be appending to the big dictionary like this, right? We need to be appending to the dictionary inside this dictionary. So our notation is going to look almost something like this, right? Where we find the section we're in, right? So go into user, and then we want to go into the dictionary inside that, okay? So in order to do that, we need to know what our current key is, right? We need to know if it's user or notifications, or maybe our file goes on, right? So instead of just setting up this dictionary key here, we also are going to have to store which section we're in, right? And just use that same notation. 1 to neg1. Excuse me. Right, and now we're keeping track of what section is. Now let's also just set up section here at the top to start off as something unused. Okay, so now we're keeping track of the section header. So that's users or notifications, right? So now, if we use big dick section, when we get down here, we'll be able to access this in a dictionary, right? Now let's just have a look at what our property actually looks like. Name equals, or if you will, key, an equal sign, and then the value. So we can split this the exact same way we split the initial Scrabble section, using dot partition. That's my personal method of choice. So if we have line dot partition, and we partition over an equals sign this time, we should get three things back. We should get what's before the value. So in this case, the key I want to use. We should get that equal sign back. Now, I don't really care about that, so I'm just going to use a little underscore dud variable there. Right? And we should also get back our value on the right-hand side. Okay? So let's just confirm that that's what's happening. Print key value. Run that again. And cool, yeah, we can see we haven't printed any of our section headings, right? Because they are all getting trapped in this part of the if. But we're getting a key, and we're getting the corresponding value. So we're really close now. All we need to do is assign the key and the value into the dictionary. Okay? Now, we already know that using big dick of section, we're going to get access to that first subsection of the dictionary, right? So we now need to get a key for that dictionary. So that's what I was talking about with adding the extra pair of brackets. And what's our key? Well, it's key. We got it from the previous line. And what's our value that we're assigning to it? It's value. Nice variable names make code really easy to write. And so, cool. Let's try that. Let's see how that goes. Okay, awesome. We've got this notifications level, and inside that we've got another dictionary. Email, yes. SMS, no. So if we were to use notifications, we see we get another dictionary, right, which has the email key and the SMS key. Okay, so that's cool. And if we use the users, oops. Oh, it was just user, excuse me. The Python's yelling at me. User, right, we get this. So we can go deeper using the second set of brackets, right? If I want to know what his name was, use the second set of brackets. Eric Idle, right? So this accessed our first dictionary, and then we accessed that dictionary's key to get into its value. So, yep, awesome. Looks like our read config is working. Let's get rid of that comment. Okay. So what was the second part of this? Also write a function getValue, which takes the above dictionary and the dot-separated name of a setting and returns the appropriate value. It is safe to assume the inputs are valid. That's nice. We can just write a quick one. So in the above, getValue user.mobile. So they want us to go into the user part of the dictionary, then into the mobile part of the dictionary. Okay. Let's scroll down here. So let's Let's just bring this shell over to the right. So we can see that that's almost what I just did before, right? We wanted to get into the user part of the dictionary, then into the name part, or into the mobile part of the dictionary, right? So we first go into the user part of the dictionary, then into the mobile. Okay, cool. So now let's write a function that can sort of shorthand this, where is the example? User.mobile notation in for us. Okay, so, well, what are we getting? We're getting a dictionary config. So we know that config contains that dictionary before. And we're getting a name, right? And this name is something like user.mobile, something like that, right? So we need to separate these guys up, right? Bit of a trending theme with this tune. So we've got the key and then the key for the second dictionary. So we want to separate on this, right? So like we've taken our, let's use some better variables, right? Header, or our section, I think is what we called it last time. Dud, and our property. Properties keyword, let's just call it prop. Okay. And we want to use our partition on that name. Now we're partitioning this time over, looks like a dot. Okay, so this will split our string up into everything before the dot, which we just chuck in a dud variable, and then everything after the dot. Okay, let's just confirm that. Always good to debug as you go. Makes it a lot easier to find out where your mistakes are. And I'm just going to move my shell back over. Okay, so get value. I didn't set up a config dictionary yet, so let's just pass that nothing. And then what's the option? We have the user.mobile. Cool, we got the user and we got the mobile. So we're almost done here. We just need to get the sections out of our dictionary, right? So the dictionary is called config. Now, to get the section header out, we set up our first set of index brackets. And then to get the second dictionary out, we set up our second set of brackets. Let's just return that. Okay, so we can see that if we've done the first couple exercises in this tute and we understand what's going on, this is largely trivial, right? Because it's just basically using stuff we used from the previous exercises and stuff we used from that question just before this one here. So let's set up our config dictionary. Where have I got? Yeah, so x read config. Cool, and now let's go get value. Let's pass it our config, which is x, and user.mobile. Oh, wait, did I F5? Oops, let's just try that again. Oh, I've returned config dot. So that's what's happening. I've returned config section dot prop. What am I doing? We want to, oh no, that is what I want to do. What am I talking about? What's in our x? Our x is in there, and then we go get value x user dot mobile. Ooh, okay, so here we go. Return config section prop. Now I have made a rookie error over here. I've put quotes around my variables, so it's trying to look for the word string. So we can see it's got here, return config key error section. It couldn't find something called specifically section, and of course it couldn't because we don't have that in our dictionary anyway. And there we go. Awesome. Never know what could happen on a live recording. Yeah, so that's the gist of, that's a pretty good introduction to dictionaries and what's happening over here, right? So you can see there's some additional I/O stuff that you can get into. I'm not going to go into that at the moment. We might get into that a bit more next week when we look a bit more at try except stuff. But yeah, for now, so that's a basic intro to dictionaries. So this is the first video I've recorded like this. So if you guys got any qualms or suggestions for improvements or anything like that, like is the mic? I know the mic's pretty shitty. It's just a shitty headset mic that I'm using, but not too much I can do about that. But you know, if the volume's off or anything like that, or any suggestions to the style I'm taking to these videos, let me know in the comments or post on Piazza or something like that. And yeah, other than that, see you guys next week.